What's going on, everyone? Steven here with TechMaker. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a simple ERC-20 token in Solidity and deploy it to the test net. There are some other videos, plenty of other videos out there showing you exactly how to build ERC-20 tokens and all of that. And I'm a little bit less interested in showing you the ins and outs of that in this video. I think there's tons of other great content out there. Instead, I'll show you how to get the basic libraries set up so that it's really easy to do. And we'll do it by writing a few tests first of all. We won't write tests for the entire contract. You'll see what I mean as we get into it, but we're going to use the Truffle framework, and then we're going to deploy everything and test against the Rinkeby testnet. There's a lot of really interesting things about how this works that I want to try to get to, because I think it's really useful if you actually want to try to build and deploy anything real out there beyond just some very simple apps. So we're going to use this video for the foundation of some more advanced videos we're going to get into. So I've got a big series coming out. We're going to build out a whole NFT gaming platform or something like that. I'm still working out the details, but I need to make sure I have some basic stuff on the channel before we get to that. So in any case, that's a lot of introduction, but hopefully this is going to be interesting. So let's go ahead and dive in. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using a tool called Truffle Framework or Truffle Suite, and it's got a few things that we're going to need. We're going to need to download the Truffle framework itself and this thing called Ganache if you don't already have it. Basically what Ganache is a local blockchain that you can run. And I'm going to go ahead and download it. I don't think I have this downloaded here yet. So we'll go ahead and download this. And I'll install Truffle as well in just a second. So once that's done, I'll go ahead and just install this thing. Let's see how long this is going to take here. So we'll drag it over there. And let's see here. All right, that's going to take 5 seconds apparently. Let's wait. Let's see if that's real 5 seconds or an Apple 5 seconds. It seems to be going pretty quick. All right, so once this is done, we'll actually install Truffle. So let's go ahead and click this and make sure that we show you how it works. It's pretty straightforward. So it's a lot of steps here. Let's see. I want to go ahead and open it. Yes. And normally, let's continue, blah, blah, blah. So what we want to do is this quick start Ethereum. So when we click that, if you've never seen this before, basically what it does is it fires up a local Ethereum blockchain. Basically, you're the only node. And it gives you 10 unlocked accounts. And you can see here that all of these unlocked accounts have 100 Ethereum. You can click on this and it says in big red letters or little red letters, do not use this private key, blah, blah, blah. It's for development. That's true. If you ever see a private key on my screen, it's not something you should even think about using because it means everybody else has seen it. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize that. That's cool. That's fine. All right, next up. What I want to do is go ahead and get this Truffle thing here, and all we need to do, you're going to have Node installed with npm, so I'll leave it to you if you don't have that set up. It's pretty straightforward to do. I guess just to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about in case there's newbies around. Not OG, we want org. Node.js.org. Okay, yeah, just come over here and install this. And again, there's tons of content on the web about how to install Node. But once you got that installed, we're going to come over here and jump over to our terminal. I'm going to make a new directory in here called Solidity, I think. And then I'm just going to install this Truffle library. And hopefully this won't take too long, but I'm going to go ahead and pause the video just in case. All right, so that actually did take a couple of minutes. So if it takes a little while for you, don't worry. Also, if you see a bunch of warnings and stuff, it should be fine as long as it completes. If it absolutely crashes, you may have to research if there's a bug or something, but warnings are typically okay. In any case, so what I'm going to do is make another directory and we'll call it, let's say rinkb demo. And then we'll just change down into rinkb demo. And then I'm going to say truffle init. And basically this is just going to fire up a new Truffle project for us. And so now if we actually list out what's in here, we can see that we've got some files and directories now. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up in my editor, which in my case I'm using VS Code, which is a great one if you don't have one picked already. And we can do that with code dot in my case, and it's just going to open it up right here. And I'm trying to make this sort of beginner friendly, so if this is really basic stuff so far, bear with me because it's going to get a little more interesting. So basically if we look in here, we've got a handful of stuff. Let's see if I'm going to go ahead and I guess I used my other laptop for Solidity mostly, so I haven't really done much on this one. This one I basically have for doing recordings and playing around and stuff. So let's see here. So this might take a second. I'm going to pause again. Basically, I got prompted to install a syntax highlighter for Solidity. So now if we open that file back up, it should show up like this. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, cool. So basically we have a folder for our contracts. We have a folder for this thing called migrations, which this is basically instructions on how to push our Solidity code out to the network. So we'll get into that in a second. And then we have a test directory with nothing in it. And then we have this big config file with a bunch of stuff commented out. So Truffle is a framework, which means that there's a lot of stuff that happens automatically when you follow certain conventions or what have you. So, and there's a lot of pre-built functionality, even if it doesn't really necessarily look like it on the surface here. But like, for example, you know, the contracts need to go in this directory. They need to be named a particular way. And then this other thing here is like, so this is JavaScript. This is Solidity. And then we're going to write mostly JavaScript, to be totally honest, in this little demo. And the way that we can actually pull in contracts is through this artifacts object. And so we can basically say const whatever thing equals artifacts.require, and then that thing as a string. And then we can do things with that object. So I'm going to follow test-driven principles here. That's how I tend to do smart contract development because everything's so kind of critical to get right. I don't always do TDD, test-driven development, when I'm working on code, but I try to do it pretty much all the time with smart contracts. So that's what I'm going to do here. And to do that, this is how we do it. So basically inside of the test directory, I'm going to create a token in this episode, and I'm just going to make up something. We'll call it like Zazzle or something. So we'll say like zazzle dot test.js, and this is going to be a test file. So if you're not familiar, the core principle behind TDD is to write a test that fails first and then write the code that makes the test pass, and you'll see what I mean in a second. And you consider anything that's broken essentially after like any line of code to be a failure, and you don't write extra code if there's not a failing test. Make sense? So we're going to try to follow that here. So what I'm going to do is say const Zazzle equals artifacts dot require Zazzle, like that. Now if I save this and I go over to my terminal, I'm going to clear this up and run truffle test. This should now fail and tell me that that artifact does not exist. A lot of people find this tedious, but I actually find a lot of I don't know the word, but I enjoy kind of this process. So could not find artifacts for Zazzle from any sources. So what we're going to do is come up here to contracts. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it zazzle.sol. And then I'm going to just copy this pragma business from up here. We're going to change this later to a different, this pragma thing basically just specifies the Solidity version that we're using, or a range of versions, I think in this case. But then I'm going to say contract Zazzle like this, and now we should be good to go. And we'll say truffle test and see if that's passing now. And by passing, we don't actually have any tests. We just don't want it to explode. So it's compiling, and basically we have a green 0 passing. Okay, so now what we can do is actually start building out this test further. So essentially, like any line of code that causes things to fail, fix it in the code, and then kind of proceed. So that's the rule. So what I'm going to do is say contract, and again, this is all sort of Truffle specific stuff, so this is just stuff you have to learn if you want to do what I'm doing here. So we'll say contract Zazzle, and then using our ES6 syntax, we'll pass in accounts, and this is a default argument that this contract thing provides. And essentially what that is, this accounts object points to those contracts that we have running. Well, I think it points to the ones we have running over on our Ganache. It might spin up an environment in the background, actually. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, so we can still look at these things, and we'll have a quick look at this and say truffle test. So if we console.log that out, which we did, we should see this big array of addresses printed out somewhere once this compiles. So we have our 0x627. So let's look at this Ganache and see if that's actually the same. It does not look like it is. So it's spinning up a different test environment. So we may not actually even need Ganache right now. I'll tell you what we do need it for is when we run truffle deploy. If we don't specify a network, the default is this local Ganache network, but we may not even do that here. So anyway, I'm just kind of thinking this through a little bit as we go. So maybe we don't need that for the moment, but you do typically need it. Okay, so what I want to do is actually back over here, we're going to write another line of code that's going to fail. So I'm going to say before, and then this is going to be an async function. And again, this is some JavaScript stuff. That's not what I want. I don't want before unload event. I want just before. And in here, what I'm going to do is say Zazzle equals await, and then Zazzle, so we're talking to the contract now, dot deployed. Okay, and then let's run the test again. That may be fine like that, or it may fail. I don't know. Let's see. If it's not, so we haven't actually given it instructions on deploying, so I don't know if this fails or not, but okay, so that's okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is write an actual spec that's going to start forcing us to actually implement some functionality. So I'm going to say it gives the owner of the token 1 million tokens, something like that. And then we'll do async, and then open that up like that. And I keep getting some of these things auto completing on here, and I need to fix this. So I definitely don't want that to say instance of, I want to say it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to just like try to call something on this contract, okay? And what I'm going to do is say, let's say let balance equal await Zazzle.balance of accounts 0. So basically, anything on Truffle that gets deployed or whatever, or any function that gets called on a contract, if you don't specify which account is calling it, account 0 calls it, which is the first one in the list. And so when we deploy this, accounts 0 is by default going to be the owner. So let's actually run this again. And as you can see, I've been kind of testing. I had a little bit of a typo and recorded and had to backtrack. So at this point, we should have a failing thing just from trying to call something on that deployed object. So nothing's been deployed. So we need to fix that next. Okay, so if we pop back over to the code, what we need to do is create a new migration. So we have this initial migration, which just deploys this migration contract. We don't really need to worry about what all of that is. But what we do need to do is actually take the contract that we wrote, the little empty contract for Zazzle basically, and just deploy it. And so whenever we run our tests, if there's a change in the file, it's going to redeploy. Okay, so I'm going to go new file, and I'm going to say the convention here is to say to_deploy contracts.js. And the reason for that is because I think these migrations get ran in order. And so anything you want sequenced, you need to like put the number in front so that you have like the ability to control which ones get run when. And I'm actually just going to copy everything in this other file and paste it here. And I'm going to change this to be Zazzle, and we'll copy that, paste it here, and then paste it here. So the first, this is part of the framework. The first argument that comes in by default is the deployer. And then we also can have network and accounts that come in as optional arguments after that. I'm going to leave this as deployer for now, and let's just run our test and see if we're green. As I said, I don't want to add code until I have a test that's failing. And that's going to break down at some point pretty soon because we're going to start importing some libraries, and that's going to basically, you know, we don't need to test like everything in the library if that library is already well tested. So in any case, we'll talk about that in a second. So now we're getting an error. Zazzle balance of is not a function. So we could actually go ahead and start trying to write out, you know, the balance of function, all this kind of stuff. But what we're actually going to do is install a library called Open Zeppelin, which has a ton of open source contracts already in it that we can use instead of writing all this stuff ourselves. So a lot of stuff now in Ethereum development is sort of becoming just assembling things that people have already written and then adding some customization to it. Now that doesn't mean you can get off the hook for like knowing what you're doing. Like you do need to know what you're doing, but it does make your life a lot easier. So let's go to Open Zeppelin and let's just do contracts. Okay. And here we go. Open Zeppelin contracts is a library. And all I want to do here is actually copy this npm install business. And then we'll go off of that. So I'm going to say npm install Open Zeppelin contracts. We are going to have to make a small config change as well in a minute, which we'll see. And then I'm going to do a quick Google for open, just so you see where I'm pulling this from, ERC-20. If you ever have something you want to do, like if you want to look at ERC-721 for NFTs or whatever, just come to the docs and like look around. But I'm just going to go ahead and try to use this code. So I'm going to copy that line to start. And then let's go over to our code here, Zazzle. And just at the top, I'm going to paste that and save. And it's going to give me a problem. Not found. So I should have something here for node modules, and I don't, which is kind of weird. Let me do npm init here and just like kind of enter through all this stuff. And then let's see, now I have a package JSON here, and I'm going to npm install that and say -- save. And let's do ls, and now we have node modules here. So let's look at this node modules. And inside of here we have Open Zeppelin, contracts, token. Okay, so here we're basically pulling in from the contracts. Do I not have contracts? Oh, that is the top level folder, just kidding. Contracts, token, ERC-20, and then ERC-20.sol. So I think that we solved the problem that we had. If we hover over this now, it's going to tell us something else. Let me close that and open it back up. Okay, so now I don't have the problem anymore because we've fixed the installation issue. Okay, so let me try to finish writing this out. So remember, we still have a failing test telling us we don't have that balance of function. And what we're going to do is pull in this contract, and we're just going to inherit from it. And we do that by saying is ERC-20. So we'll say is ERC-20 and save. And anytime in my editor, at least, you have an error, Solidity will underline it with this red squiggly line. And so it's often helpful to read that, but sometimes it's not helpful. So right now it's saying it should be marked as abstract. And it's saying that because we haven't actually implemented everything. So I'm going to copy this and paste this in here, fix the indentations. Okay, so what's that saying? Visibility is ignored. So first and foremost, I think we're going to have to fix something with regard to the version of Solidity up here, but I'm not sure yet. So what we can do is say, so what's happening is ERC-20, if we go over here to the constructor, let's actually, I don't want to go super deep into all of this, but let's take a quick look. So if we go into the contracts, and then we go into token, ERC-20, ERC-20.sol. So over here you can see we have a constructor which takes the name of the token and the symbol, and that's what's getting passed in over here. So I'm going to say that the name should be Zazzle and the token should be ZAZL. Okay, so what I want to do also, I don't like this being the initial supply because I'm thinking of this as like it's being hard coded. I just want it to be like hard capped in my case, I think. And so you could just do it like that. But one thing that I want to be able to do in the deployment, because what's going to happen, so basically what we're doing here is we're hard coding in Zazzle and ZAZL as the name and ticker, and then we're giving it a dynamic supply. So I want to be able to pass in 1 million. But the thing is, everything in Solidity, not everything, but most ERC-20 tokens have 18 decimals, and we need to account for that. So what I like to do personally is say times and then 10 to the power of the number of decimals that there are. And this decimals function comes from in here. So if we do a quick find for decimals, there's a function that just returns 18. So that's kind of handy. But anyway, so basically what this is going to do is say, you pass in whatever number, and it's going to say multiply that number times 10 to the power 18, which is 18 decimal places. So that makes sense. Let's see. And then the only other thing is we need to deploy it with the argument here. So what I'll do is say 1 million. So, and you can see that the deployer basically takes the name of the contract and then the argument, and that argument is the supply. That's basically all it is to it. So let's go run the tests again and see if we have anything broken, because we might. They may have updated Truffle, but I've been getting an issue with the particular version of the Solidity compiler. Truffle is currently using, there we go, that's it. All right, so what I'm going to do is in my contracts, and I need to fix the migrations thing too, I'm just going to say 0.8.0 like that. And then I'm going to fix it in my Zazzle one as well. And that's going to, let's see what the error is. Current compiler is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is open up my Truffle Config down here. And my compiler, I'm going to uncomment and make this 0.8.0. And see what's going on here. Let's close that back. Sometimes you have to like close and open to get the error to go away. Okay, so now everything, nope, still looks kind of broken. Source file requires different compiler. Let's actually run this and see what happens. It might still fail because I might be still missing something. I don't think so though. Maybe it's because you actually have to run it. Okay, cool. So that all should probably go away. I don't know why that's showing up like that. Like it's broken, but it seems like it's fine. I'm not going to worry about this migrations file too much. My Zazzle file, that's not it. Where is Zazzle? Here we go. Yeah, I'm just going to ignore that. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why that's highlighting that for me because it seems to be working. Maybe we'll run into an issue in a little bit. We'll find out. So what's going on here? Basically, we have minted 1 million tokens for accounts 0. So let's actually implement the test to just verify that. Now, at this point, we aren't doing TDD anymore because we're testing after the fact. And it's not really, I don't want to try to test every single thing in the library. So we're just going to kind of write a couple of basic tests just for sanity checks, and then we'll move on from that. Okay, so first thing let's do is just console.log balance. A big fan of just checking what we're looking at here, and I want to make sure that everybody sees what we're looking at here. So the balance that comes back is probably going to be some really huge number. And in actual fact, it's basically giving us this BN object, which stands for big number. And it's really hard to sort of look at that and see exactly what's going on. So what we can do is say, well, actually what we need to do is convert this to, we need to get rid of all those decimals. And the way that we do that is we can say web3.utils.fromWay, and this is part of the Web3 library, which is sort of also running under the hood inside of Truffle. And Way is the base unit in Ethereum. So it's like that's, you know, 1 ether is 1 times 10 to the 18 Way. And so what we can do is say, tell me what my balance is, but convert it from Way into something which would be like ether, which is going to be your base unit there. So let's actually run that. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, but this should basically say 1 million now. So let's see here. So we have 1 million ether right there. Okay, so what I want to do is, and actually I don't need that ether in that. Actually, so the ether was supposed to go in here. I guess it works without it, is the point. It printed out 1 million ether, which it shouldn't have. So what I'm going to do is say balance equals this. So we're just doing a little conversion, and then I'm going to assert equal, and then we'll say balance, and then we'll do 1 million, and then we'll give it a message, say balance should be 1 million tokens for contract creator. And that may actually need to be a string right here. Let's go ahead and run that and see what happens. So if this works, then we should have 1 passing test. But let's see what happens. Okay, cool. So, and we can come in here and play with this and, you know, change that and make sure that actually, I'll show you what a failing test looks like. So there you go. So let's fix that really quick, but that's basically the idea. We should be able to do something too, like let's add one more little test here just to make sure we can transfer, and because there's a couple of key concepts in here that I want to show. So it can transfer tokens between accounts, and so we'll make that an async function again so that we can use the await. And basically what I want to do is say, well, you know what we can do is actually transfer some tokens from our account 0 over to like account 1, for example, and then just verify that they're there. So what we can do is say awaits, and then Zazzle.transfer. And what I want to do is say, we got to tell it who we're transferring to. So we'll say accounts 1. And again, this is all within that ERC-20 spec. that you can go read on the GitHub that we were just looking at. You can look up the definition of transfer and see what arguments it takes and so on. So it's going to take that, and then I want to say let amount equal, and then we'll say web3.utils again dot two-way. So this is the opposite direction. What this basically does is it allows us to use sort of normal-ish numbers instead of writing a whole bunch of really long numbers with tons of decimals. So I'll say I'm going to transfer 1,000, and then we'll say ether, and that's just specifying, like, I don't even know if we need that. I think that's just like an optional thing. I think it probably defaults to ether, but I think that's where you get the anyway, it's telling you what your starting point is. It's like I have 1,000 ether and I want you to convert that into way, so it's going to give you 1,000 times 10 to the 18. Okay, so we want to transfer the amount, and then we can actually specify, we don't have to specify the account we're sending from since it's account 0, but I'd prefer to, just to make it more obvious. So accounts 0, like that. Okay, so we're just going to wait on that transfer to finish, and then what I'm going to do is say balance, let balance equal, and then we can copy this. Actually, let's get both of those lines up there, and we want to get account 1, and then we have balance as that, and then let's assert equal 1,000, and then it should be 1K tokens. Okay, so let's run this, and this is just going to verify that yes, we do have everything working. We can transfer tokens around. Everything's good to go. So again, we were trying to do this TDD, but then you switch to a library, and boom, you got all its functionality. So you know, it is what it is. So now we have a fully functional Zazzle token. And what we want to do is see about deploying this to the testnet. And I'm a little worried about this. I don't know why I have this warning coming in. I wonder if it has any. Surely that's not an issue. That's just a comment. Okay, so let's see. Source file requires different compiler version. Okay. Maybe what if I put this on 0.4? Does that fix it? That does fix it. Let's actually switch the migrations as well. And let's see if that works when I run the test. Just want to see if I can get everything kind of cleaned up. In the next episode, we're going to do the actual testnet. So we're going to deploy to Rinkeby. Compilation failed. Pragma Solidity 0.8.4. Truffle is currently using 0.8.0. So I can come down here to my config and try 0.4 again. Not again for the first time. We had like 5 point something to start with. I think that the Open Zeppelin uses 0.8.0 though, but maybe that got updated. We can actually look at that really quick. Okay, so it's minimum 0.8.0. Okay, and then I specified exactly 0.8.0, so we're still on the 0.8 minor versions here, so that should be fine. At least my warnings went away, so that makes me feel a little bit better. Okay, cool. So in the next episode, we're going to deploy this to the testnet. And yeah, so that'll basically show you how to deploy everything from Truffle, and deploying to the mainnet would work exactly the same way, except for you'll be spending real money if you want to do that. So anyway, I was planning to get a little further in this episode, but it's kind of dragging out. So I'll get the other one out probably about the same time as this one. So you should have both episodes available. If you're watching this, check the description for the link. But as always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.